No. Okay.
Well, I'll give you a chance. So who is going to ask the first question? Okay, yes.
Can I ask about the feeling of happiness that you received as a young monk? Because what was the process? Was it from difficulty to happiness, or was it just an intuition that you got?
That's a good question. Was it from a difficulty to happiness, or was it just an intuition? I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, was cultivated through the power of meditation. I was always enjoyed meditation, even as a young student, and because of that, that opened your mind to be able to have more energy and to see clear what was going on. And I'm not going to tell the gross stories. I don't want to upset Ajahn anymore. But anyway, one thing which I do notice on meditation retreats, that what you see, what you smell, what you hear, even what you feel, becomes kind of purified. I just that just after lunch, I just also went to go and sit outside in the grass paddock by this hotel. And by sitting in the grass paddock, it was just a beautiful experience. It was nice and warm, but not hot. A little bit of a breeze, but not windy. And the grass looked so gorgeously green. It's something which really surprised me when I started meditating, to see just how it's like your senses get all shined up and cleared up, and you can see much more. And one example of that was on my first retreat I did as a lay person. I was about 19 at the time, and that we were allowed to go for a walk 1 hour every morning. And this was held at the other place. You know what I mean? At Cambridge. And we hired a little Buddhist group, hired just a group of boarding houses for students. And we were allowed to go for a walk 1 hour every morning before breakfast. And because, I'd been at a university for a while, I went to the botanical gardens in Cambridge. Honestly, this was how important an experience this was. That street was called Bateman Street in Cambridge. And at the end of the street, that was where the back door of the botanical gardens was. And every morning, I would walk over to there. It's walking for exercise. I never got much exercise, and it's a good reason why not. And when I went through the back door of the botanical gardens, the back gate, the first plant which I saw there was a clump of bamboo. And it just caught my attention. It was the most beautiful clump of bamboo I'd ever seen in my life. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I realized, seeing that clump of bamboo, why they do have bamboos in Chinese watercolors. They have the way that they bend, just almost like perfect curve. And they get narrow as they get to the apex, to the top. And the colors of green and yellow they meld almost perfectly with the bending bamboo. And they sway in the morning breeze. And even the leaves of the bamboo plant, they're not kind of fat like English leaves, but they're very slender. The whole thing was just essentially just so well balanced. And when I saw that first clump of bamboo, that I just couldn't take my eyes off it. It was just so appealing. And so I was wise enough to sit down, because if anybody had seen this young student, I was pretty hairy in those days. I had what was called like a donut look. Donut, you can see my face in the middle, but where the the hair, the curly hair finished, that's when the beard started. It was actually very practical in the cold weather in the wintertime. But anyhow, I realized I had enough awareness there to realize I should actually go and sit down. So I sat down on a park bench and I spent 50 minutes just staring at a clump of bamboo. I never ever got tired of it. You're always seeing new things every moment. It was only when I realized I should go back for a breakfast. I was a young man, I liked my breakfasts. So I went back for breakfast, and the next day, instead of going for exercise, I just walked to my most beautiful clump of bamboo, sat down and spent another 50 minutes with it. For 8 of those 9 days, all I did was just stare and explore the beauty of this clump of bamboo. It was weird. Many of the things which I experienced in meditation at that time were weird. I'd never seen them before. It's only later on I understood what was going on. Your sense of sight was like amplified, cleaned, like it had all been brushed, and you could see these colors and these shapes so perfectly, and you never got tired of it. And then what happened after 8 days? One day I did actually get some exercise. I went by the river instead of in the botanical gardens. But for those mornings, I always went to see my clump of bamboo. You could see I was getting kind of attached to it, my clump of bamboo. But I got so much joy and pleasure from it. And then one day, back at university again, messing around, studying, socializing. But then I had a free morning and I went to see the most beautiful clump of bamboo in the world. I had some time for it. And I was so disappointed. As soon as I turned the corner and saw this clump of bamboo, this was in Cambridge. The bamboo doesn't really fit in a cold climate like that. And it looks so half dead, malnourished, as a plant which had been planted in the wrong place. And I could not see its beauty anymore. And that's what shocked me. For 8 days, I didn't have to try. I could see its beauty right in front of me. But then, when I was busy, when I lost the power of my mindfulness, I could not see it. It had been disappeared. And that's where I usually quote one of my favorite poets, William Blake. And he was the one who, one of his sayings and one of his poems was, to see a world in a grain of sand, see a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. And an hour is usually the time I give my talks. But it wasn't, there was like time just lost its meaning when you're really mindful. And you can see beauty in everything. And you hold eternity in the palm of your hand. That gentleman, William Blake, he was, I think, 17th century. And it was amazing what he said there. Really kind of struck me. He was obviously getting a great deal of mindfulness. I don't know from where. But that's what happens with mindfulness. You see things you've never seen before. They've always been there, but you see them much more deeply. If this was a longer retreat, I would always ask you to check the carpet every morning. And after a while, it's an old carpet, but after a while you see it's incredible, the amount of detail in that carpet, the different colors, the way it's all been arranged. You can see beauty where you never expected to see it before. And you see detail so rich. This is what happens when mindfulness starts to work. This is one of the things which I wish more people would teach. The power of mindfulness. And the superpower, how you can see beauty. We've never seen it before. And not only that, how it can draw you in, you can really investigate. The beauty is what holds your attention, so you don't have to wander around and be restless. How could I ever be restless when you saw that gorgeous clump of bamboo? You were kind of spellbound by it. It wasn't a person, it was a plant. And this is where you get a lot of happiness from. And if that happens to you, please enjoy it. You get some happiness, but also then you learn how to contemplate, explore, get into other things in the world where you can find great degrees of insight. And that's why sometimes the nuns, the monks, become very happy monks and nuns. And that's one of my resolutions when I was young. I didn't want to be a student of a miserable monk. Would you like to actually listen to talks by a miserable nun? Of course you wouldn't. I wouldn't either. So you've got like a nice, happy, kind bhikkhuni. Would you like to be a student of a miserable, fierce monk? Would you prefer a rebellious monk who never keeps to the schedule? You see, there's something which is attractive in that thinking for yourself and seeing beauty and happiness no matter where you are. So that's actually why I became a bhikkhu, and that's why I teach also, because I always feel you should share whatever gems which you have. Gems of wisdom, gems of being able to see things in a different way than other people see them. And also to be able to lessen people's unhappiness. Honestly, do you think I'm a happy monk?
Yes. Yes.
Once I had, because I went to a posh university, there's many of those monks who were my many of my Buddhists who were my friends. And some of them were very kind of proud, and they had got their PhDs in something in Buddhist studies. And when I told them, they were my friends, and I said, I'm going to go off and become a monk. They said, well, you're not going to last. They thought I wasn't going to last as a monk. I think I proved them wrong. It's over 50 years now. Then I saw them afterwards and said, why did you actually say that? I wasn't offended. I just wanted to find out, why did you think I was not serious as a monk? And that's what they told me. They said, because you were too happy. Too happy to be a monk. That kind of shook me. Do you have to be sick to go to hospital? What about the doctors and the nurses and other support staff? Will they not let you in the door of a hospital if you're too healthy? But certainly as a monk, I'm a bhikkhuni. It's great if you have that inner happiness. It shows you what's possible. Do you remember those, when I was a kid, I used to watch the TV, you have those advertisements on the TV? Which soap powder washes whiter? Yeah. Is it which teacher laughs the most? That was really important for me, to see that this path actually did have a good result. And not just cold wisdom. A cold wisdom I can get from books. I want that happy wisdom. You can feel somebody really cares for you without wanting anything from you at all. That was inspiring. Does that answer the question? Does anyone want to have a follow-up? Can I give you a few minutes rest? Yes, good. Yeah.
Ajahn, I read in one of your books, you would talk about the stick analogy of what would happen in the next life.
Okay, yeah.
How hard it is to be a human. I was wondering if you could speak to more about that.
Yes, certainly. Okay. So you're thinking of dying? Please excuse me, but being a monk, and being Ajahn Brahm, just I can crack a joke about anything, and I offend many people. I apologize for that. But of course, we'll all die one day, and that's one of the great sayings that one of the philosophers I follow, a very profound philosopher, is what is it? Snoopy. Because sometimes in these cartoons, sometimes they say things, and they're so incredibly profound. They say that it's true that one day we will all die, but most days we don't die. It is, yes. So have a positive attitude on things. One day you will die, Gunta, but most days you don't. Exactly. And it's being truthful without being sort of morose about life and death. And also it does mean that you can have that positive attitude. You're not going to die today, and not on our retreat. That's forbidden from the rules. And it's great I can actually say that. And all the meditation retreats which I have given over 50 years and more, no one has ever died on my retreat. And there's many retreats, and I get some really deep meditations. And that's good to know. Because, here we go. This is another one of those interesting stories. I love telling the interesting stories because sometimes these things happen. And it's good for you to know exactly the breadth and extent of this meditation practice. There's one guy, he would only usually meditate for about 40 minutes a day. And one day, one afternoon, on a Sunday in Perth, he told his wife there was nothing on the TV, so he went into the bedroom to meditate. So off he went, he often does that. And so his wife never thought twice about it. Only 2 hours later, he hadn't come out of the bedroom. So she went inside to have a look, and he was sitting perfectly still. Too still. She couldn't see any breath. So she called the ambulance. If it was Perth, it was 111, or 000, sorry. Over in UK, it's still 999. So his wife called 999, and an ambulance came almost immediately because it was a Sunday afternoon, hospital not too far away, not busy. And so the medics came in and checked him out, and he was not breathing. Could find no sign of any pulse. So straight into the ambulance, emergency to the hospital. Speeding, making a lot of noise, going through every red light they could possibly find. Not on purpose, but just to get there quickly. And when they got to the hospital, the, what do you call it, those nurses, triage nurses, took one look at him, and he was not conscious, so they thought. They put these machines on him which make sure that this is true. The ECG and the EEG. ECG for the heart, that was a flat line, and the EEG was also a flat line. Technically he was dead. But the one strange thing about his condition, which the doctor noticed, I mentioned this before, and this is important for you because these things actually happen, that his body was still warm. It hadn't gone cold. And the doctor on duty, another fortunate part of this story, was the doctor on duty was from Indian. His parents had migrated to Perth from India, and now the son was a doctor. He'd heard his mum and dad talk about sometimes yogis who can go in such deep meditation, they can stop breathing and stop their heart. And that's what he saw, and the guy had been meditating, and he was still warm. So he did the only thing he could think of at the time. It was a Sunday afternoon, he could consult with nobody, so he just gave him defibrillators, electric shocks, to try and get his heart beating again, and nothing worked. And over quite a long time, an hour or so, he basically wasn't busy, so he kept on trying and trying and trying. And after 1 hour of no breath, no heartbeat, that's when he decided to come out of his meditation. And as soon as he decided, beep, beep, beep. the defibrillators, so not defibrillators, the ECG and the EEG started beating properly. And he opened his eyes, bent up. The doctor was surprised. His wife was relieved, and he was surprised. What am I doing in here? I was in my bedroom. And the doctor gave him, this is absolutely true story. I've told it many times. And the doctor just gave him a full checkup, and there was nothing wrong with him. And the doctor trusted there was nothing wrong with him, did as many tests as he possibly could. So he didn't actually keep him in overnight, even. He let him walk home with his wife, in his own 2 legs. And when... Okay, that's his ghost calling to Steve. Yeah, I may have missed something out. Okay, mistakes happen here. But anyhow, he walked home. And I always remembered asking him, he said, all that time, did you hear the sound of the ambulances? No. Did you hear, the wife talking to the medics? No. Did you actually feel the defibrillators on your body? The big electric shocks, which move you off the table a centimetre or 2, no? I said, well, what were you doing during that time? He said he was blissing out, enjoying a wonderful state of inner peace. And so was there anything unpleasant about that experience at all? He said, yes. The unpleasant part of that experience was the scolding he got from his wife on the way home. He walked over, don't you ever do that again, darling. It just scared her. And I don't want that to scare any of you, or your relations or loved ones. It's a beautiful experience. That's what happens in the deep meditations. And it's so peaceful, so wonderful. So if it happens, don't be afraid. You'll be fine. That I guarantee you. I've got 2 questions now. I think you get your question 1 and then 2 over there. Yes?
Can you give us some practical advice on how to overcome this fear? Because it is something of an issue for me, because I get to this deep meditation and then I'm just right there and I'm afraid to let go.
Okay, yes. Well, first of all, it's my job to market it. And I'm just being honest with you, how beautiful it is, how much wisdom you get from that, and how safe it is. Because when you go in there, sometimes, very basically the pleasure of it. I'm just, from one monk I know very well, it was the pleasure of that experience. Just it's like right in front of you, and you can't resist it. It's just too delightful. And that overcomes the fear. Like many people, I don't know how many people would do this abseiling or do the bungee jumping. That would scare the hell out of me. But deep meditation, that's easy. So this is actually where it's safe, and it's just you're letting go of many of your delusions, your sense of self, your attachments. But it's worth it, because you have a beautiful experience. When you come out afterwards, you've got this great sense of awareness and mindfulness. You can see beauty even in an old carpet. So these are wonderful experiences. That's why I talk about that. Obviously you have to let go of your sense of self for a little while, but it's okay. It will come back again if you really want it. It's nice not to have it at all. So you can go there many times. You're so light-hearted, so free and peaceful. Is that okay for now? Okay.
I'm a bit confused about right effort.
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, I was quite involved in sports. I was from Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And our team coaches always told us, if you fail, don't give up. You'll be sad, you'll be upset, you'll cry, you'll have tears, but you really have to try, and that is the train really hard.
Yes.
And I have told that to my children as well. So when I think about right effort and comparing having peace in your mind, it contradicts sometimes.
Yes.
when we fail, get sad, but if we give up, we will not be there where we wanted to. So, yeah, I've got a confusion with this.
Okay. A good answer to that question is, sometimes we precede all these things like effort, mindfulness, and, right speech, action, and livelihood. A lot of times, why do we call it right this and right that? A lot of times it's when it's contingent, dependent upon the goal. It's right effort to let go, to be still, if you're practicing for meditation. It's not right effort to be still if you are, say, being a doctor. You've got to actually do the operation. It's right effort to sometimes walk slowly. If you're doing walking meditation, that sometimes is a beautiful way of doing walking meditation. But it's not right effort to be slow if you're crossing the road. I still remember one time we went to an international conference, and during the breakout sessions, we chose leaders, about 6 or 7 of them. Can you go to this session? You go to the next session. You go to the other group, and then please can you come back and report to us, what you decided upon in the breakout session of the conference. And this one person, she was a very good meditator, and so she went to one session, and when it was her turn to report, what had they decided, she walked really mindfully. She first of all stood up from her chair, then walked very slowly, mindfully, to the lectern, and she took so long to walk to the lectern that by the time she got there, the MC had no choice but to say, "Thank you, now return." She hadn't said anything. And there was a Tibetan monk sitting next to me, and he almost fell off the chair laughing. He wasn't sort of trying to demean anybody, it was just, to him, it was just so funny. There was a time, to walk slowly. There's a time to actually, out of kindness, to walk in at a normal pace. You're from Sri Lanka, I say there's always a time to be attached. If you are on the back seat of a motorbike in Gaul Road going through busy traffic, please be attached. I think the Gaul Road is one of the busiest roads over in Colombo. So, sometimes people have these ideas and they don't know how they are applied. That's why, in the Noble Eightfold Path we have Samma, before Samaditi, the right view. And if you are going to be an athletic champion, yes, right effort means a lot of exercise. But if you're going to be a bhikkhuni who gets into deep meditation, then know how to stop, how to be still. So that's some of the definitions of these terms. As I think Ajahn Chandra has mentioned to you many times, when we talk about samadhi, a lot of damage has been done to people's meditations when they call it concentration rather than stillness. If you call it stillness, that's a much more accurate meaning, and it also changes how you meditate. You're aiming for stillness. Your body becomes still, your mind becomes still. And for effort, sometimes there's only one person can be the world champion. I know many people who go in those races want to be the world champion, but only one can get to where they want to be. Everyone else will be losers. And that's one of my favorite words, to be a loser, not a winner. In a meditation retreat, see how much you can lose. How many defilements, attachments. You're going to lose them anyway, sooner or later. Even getting degrees. You lose those degrees in the end. You can't remember just what the latest breakthroughs were. Only for a while, you've graduated. And after a while, you've forgotten. You're unemployable. I studied theoretical physics. I'd have been very employable when I was 21. Now I'm 73. I don't think I'll get a job anywhere. So I better stick to being a monk. Trouble with being a monk, that no one gives you a pension when you get old. Should we try that in the future? Giving monks and nuns pensions? Now, anyway, there's another question over this side somewhere. Oh, two over there. Okay. I can see two. The lady first and the guy afterwards.
So I just wanted to ask as well about right effort. So it was interesting how you said that you see letting go as being the opposite of effort, but I can't understand how, if letting go is the opposite, why is it so hard?
One of the reasons why letting go is so hard, it is the opposite of effort. One of the reasons because we never trained in that. All your parents, friends, motivators, people at school, they always encourage you, please pass the exam, work harder, do better. I still remember as a young kid when the teacher would ask me, my lay name was Peter. Say, Peter, what do you think of that? Nothing. And you got in trouble for that. It's true, you always had to think about something, give an opinion of it. And against that, there was a time monk, I should really try and find out his name because I've forgotten it so many years ago. And he was one of these young boys who went to grade 1 and he failed grade 1 at school. That's quite an achievement to fail grade 1. Unless it's stick people drawing or plasticine. I don't know what people do in grade 1 these days. But anyway, he failed grade 1, so he had to repeat grade 1. He failed it a second time. And after the third time, the teacher, the school staff, they tried their best, but he just couldn't learn. So what do you do in Thailand with a boy who 3 times fails grade 1?
Becomes a monk.
Yeah, becomes a monk, yes. But not all monks started like that. They sent him to the local monastery, and the teacher there, the head monk, tried his very best, was very kind, and spent hours just teaching him little things like the chanting of Namo Tassa. Many of you may know that Theravada chant, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I'm just proving I wasn't that boy. And they do the Namo, but he couldn't do the Tassa. When he started doing the Tassa, he forgot the Namo. And so this poor abbot had such a hard time with this boy that he just couldn't teach him anything. So what then do they do with him? Go to forest monasteries. The Boar. That's where I come from. But this young man, he had such a peaceful, beautiful, simple mind. When they gave him a meditation object, it was a natural. He could sit for hours, perfectly peaceful. And according to his reputation, he soon became fully enlightened. As you would. His mind was so clear. And in order to find out the chanting, which all monks will have to do, all nuns as well, he just could remember his previous life when he did know the chanting. And whenever he had to do any ceremony, he would send his mind back to the previous life and connect with that to get the chanting into this life. That's what he said anyway. So I don't know, if you have any young daughter in your family and she's hopeless at school, now you know where to send her. Are you laughing? He's trying hard to resist. And there's this welcoming sort of different characteristics and different skills. And sometimes we only measure one skill, which is to think, put things into words. That's one of the reasons why I encourage you to learn how to be still in meditation. Learn how to be able to see without thinking. To know without giving it a name. To experience without writing an essay about it. I don't know if, as forest monks, we spend a lot of time in nature and we see some beautiful things. And sometimes when you see like a sunset, or over in Perth, the air is so clear and we see the Milky Way. That's why it's called Australia. So there's so many stars up there in the sky. In that little place where we have our stupas, I encourage people, sometimes it's a bit cold, but the stone actually soaks up the heat of the day. And in the evening you can just lay on there, on the stupa, and stare up at the stars at the night time. It's safe, it's not too cold, and it's absolutely mind-blowing actually to see all the stars so clear in the sky above you. It's beautiful. And this is actually, we forgot to do that. We look at photos, or we get it on our internet feed or whatever. Instead of doing that, just look. And sometimes you cannot capture that beauty in words or thoughts. You need a poet to be able to do that. Someone who's so skilled in words, they can paint a picture with language. And that's just like the English. There's so many other languages, and some language can actually capture it so much better. But that's actually to be able to find a meaning in something just like the heavens at night time, in the language, in words. And when someone does that, that's why they become great poets. You can read their little couplet, time and time and time again. That's, I already mentioned one, right? William Blake, see a world in a grain of sand, heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. The first time I read that, I thought, wow, that's amazing. Because it communicated something to me, something which I understood. And so you can actually respect that poet. Does that kind of make sense to you? Yeah. But it's nice to be quiet inside. You don't need to put things into words. That other people struggle with that. You just know and enjoy them. Okay, the guy in front of you.
Is it realistic for a layperson to abide in the jhanas on a regular basis? Like, how still do you have to be? How still is the...
As a regular basis, I don't know how regular you think is, but yes, lay people do that. And I'm saying that, out of kind of experience and knowledge. It's not what I've read from other people. What I read from other people was a gentleman, was it Lee Brasington, isn't it? Yeah. He wrote a book, and somebody showed me one of the paragraphs or chapters in this book. They say, if you want to have your experience of jhanas validated, or just told they're not real jhanas, he gave a list of monks to contact. And he said, the second most toughest monk to ask the question of, was this a jhana? The second most toughest was Pa Auk Sayadaw from Burma. And the toughest monk to ask was this Aussie monk called Ajahn Brahm. Honestly, that's what was in his book. And of course, someone showed me that, and I laughed my head off again as usual. But, so yeah, people do actually ask. And some people do. And one of those people who do, I don't mind saying this again, this guy who came on one of my retreats in Australia, summertime, hot weather, he came wearing traditional Aussie uniform, with thongs, shorts, and a t-shirt. That was it. And he had fuzzy hair, and straight away, I say this because I think I need to say it, was that I judged him. I thought he was got to the wrong place, because not far away from my monastery there's a prison. I thought he was going to visit some of his mates. Honestly, that's how dumb I am. And he said, no, I'm on this retreat. I checked his name, he was there. I'd never seen him before. But then, when we had his private interviews, that's when, he was saying how his meditation was going. And I love saying this story because it makes me happy just saying it. He was telling just how he really did get into the real dinky-die, real jhana. I couldn't believe it. I've never seen him before. And he was actually just, and if he didn't, I wouldn't say he did. Just there's nothing in it for me. But when you see that it was a real jhana, wow, sadhu, 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 you've done it, well done. And that gave me a lot of confidence. I did confidence, no, not really, because I had confidence already. But that surprised me, taught me never ever to judge anybody ever again. You see a person, you don't know how long they've been meditating, but sometimes they press the letting go button. And I love saying that, letting go button. It's like a button inside you. It's a metaphor, okay? Let go, and then it just happens. And you get all those beautiful experiences. And you come and ask someone like me, and if I'm not convinced, I won't say I was. And so it works. It's possible. And I know many of you won't experience the jhanas, but that doesn't stop me encouraging each one of you. It's possible, it can happen. And make sure you remember why it happened. You never asked for it, you never tried for it. You just made the causes, contentment, peace, not wanting anything in the whole world. Make sure your virtue is pure. That's an important ingredient in it. The sila, your kindness, your virtue, the way that you're not a self-centered person. You volunteer for things like the Anukampa Bhikkhuni Project. And Ayachandra talks about you, you're just one of those people always there, always helpful. You're the kind of person who, nowadays, I think, give her a chance. You will soon get into these deep meditations. And that does change a lot of your life. Was another question over here first, I think? Yeah. Oh, now I'm in trouble. Okay. Okay, yeah, in the glasses, yeah. Go on, yes? I believe so.
Thank you, Ajahn. My question is about mindfulness for children, because in the UK, school has started to choose mindfulness course at school, but a survey shows that mindfulness course only works for some children, but not for all, because some children's behavior will become worse. Is it because the content, the mindfulness content, is not perfect, or the method is not correct, or the frequency? What causes these problems? Also, as parents, what can we do at home?
Yeah, I would say I'm not sure if this is correct, but he's saying that there's my answer that some courses they teach mindfulness in school, and it doesn't seem to be very effective. Sometimes it's wrong to teach just mindfulness. It would be great to teach the children sila as well, virtue. And why virtue? Virtue is actually fun. It's weird. My own experience with sila, I was born in 1951, okay, and a child of always being rebellious teenagers. And so I remember taking my first, I'm being honest with you, I wasn't born a monk. My first glass of beer when I was 14, I still remember the pub in Richmond. It's probably illegal, but anyway, the guy served it to me. And so, and because I came from a poor family, if my the bus driver never asked for the fare, I didn't see why I should give it to him. It's his fault, not mine. But after a few years, I just really didn't like the person who was always worried, for a good reason. He hadn't paid a fare, and so they needed to collect fares to keep the buses running. So after a while, I started always going up to the bus driver at the end of the journey, if he hadn't asked me for the fare, and giving it to him. And he was actually quite surprised, young, hairy, 14 or 15-year-old could actually do that. And so I was becoming honest. And not just honest, I do remember even killing animals. I just could not do that anymore. Because the thing which really stopped me killing animals was when there was a mouse in my mum's council flat. My father had just died, and I thought I should look after my mum. And she was really terrified of that mouse. So I bought a trap, set it, and I was very smart, successful. I was there when the trap sprung. And I checked up, and there's a little mouse in there dead. And that really hurt me. And I picked it up and just was stroking that mouse. It was a beautiful mouse. It was so clean. I don't know why they were afraid of mice. That mouse was very like it just been groomed or something. And then I started fantasizing, thinking, that mouse has probably got other people who love it. We're just trying to get some food for somebody. Why are people so afraid of mice? And I took that to, the bins, to be taken away. And that was the last thing I ever killed, on purpose. I couldn't do that anymore. That's even in those days, that's when I became a vegetarian. I had to give up being a vegetarian, strangely, when I became a monk. I still remember with the first time I took a little prawn at the Thai temple. In those days it was in Richmond. And they said, well, look, you have to be much more able to eat whatever is given to you. So I took that prawn, and that was kind of traumatic. So anyway, that's actually my job with the precepts. And I always became honest, a good person afterwards. And even with my sensual life, I did have a girlfriend, but I could only have ever one. I could never cheat on her. And that was because I couldn't afford it. I'll be honest with you. You're only a young man, crikey, that's just too hard. But not more than that. You never wanted, for your girlfriend to tell you that she was seeing somebody else. You know how that kind of hurt. Lack of trust in someone you were trying to have a relationship with. A relationship, not just enjoyment, is someone you can trust and be with. Anyway, that was my journey. So and after a while, when you started keeping precepts, you felt much better about yourself. You always felt so you had nothing to be afraid of, doing nothing wrong. And also you had enough funds, to just survive. And I was having much more joy. When it came to alcohol, when I gave up alcohol, that was when I went into college. And honestly, I don't mind shaming Cambridge colleges at that time, because what turned me off alcohol was every year they would have a scholars' dinner. The only way I could get to a college like that was getting scholarships. So I was a scholar at that college. And so that once a year, all the scholars and all of the dons and fellows and stuff, one of them was a Nobel Prize winner, and they all had this big feast. And this feast, I'm embarrassed to say it, but it was a huge, up in the, first of all, the gallery, built by Sir Christopher Wren, and then these were butlers, real butlers, in tails. And when they were serving this incredibly good sherry, first of all, they were going around this big table in a clockwise direction. I was studying maths, which was also to theoretical physics. And I worked out that they were going around in a clockwise direction. If I went in the opposite direction, anti-clockwise, I would meet them twice on every circuit, which means I would get twice as much cherry as others. Now that's how you thought, and you're supposed to be smart. And so I would drink many bits of sherry, then you went for the 9-course meal. Yeah, indeed. I know later on, when I went to Hong Kong, I had a 9-course meal, and they never told me. So when I got to the 3rd or 4th course, I've had enough. I said, no, there's another 5 courses to come. I said, no way. But this was a 9-course meal, and again with a different wine with every course. And if that wasn't enough, then we went to the old library, and there, sitting down, 3 glasses, one for port, one for claret, one for Madeira. And then, all served again by the butlers were still at work, making sure you never had a glass empty. And then the goblet came down. And the goblet was about the width of this, but maybe 2 or 3 times the depth. And there's silver, jewellery, it must have been worth absolute fortune. An old college heirloom. Filled, but this time I didn't know what they filled it with. And it was actually crazy. And it was filled to the brim, you had to drain it. And afterwards, say the college toast in Latin. Honestly, that's what they did. And of course, I'd never been so sick in my life. I don't know how I ever got back to my room. It's actually dangerous. But that was it, you went to an extreme. And I never would ever do that again. That was the last alcohol I ever took in my life. I wouldn't do it again. And first of all, I thought, I'm going to keep these precepts, but, I'm not going to have a social life anymore. I started thinking, what would happen? I'd get no invitations to parties, because, they didn't like people who didn't do what they did. But actually I got more invitations. They always wanted somebody sober to drive the other ones home. That's my role. Okay, oh yeah, I better, yeah. Is that why? Okay, I've got to wrap up for the final session. So that's actually when you do the meditation. If you keep good precepts first, it's much easier. It actually makes it easier for the kids. Okay. There was one nun. So, yeah, I think, please. I think the nuns actually take precedence. Hope you don't mind. Okay.
Ajahn Brahm, your book on forest monasticism is so inspiring, your journey. If you could say something to your younger self when you were just entering the forest as a monastic, what would you say?
I say just, make peace, be kind, be gentle. That's actually just what's motivating you all the time. Okay, we need to do another wrap up. Can we ask that last person had a question in the back? Yeah. Who had a hand up? Yeah, quick. Yeah, go on.
How do you think about death when there's serious illness, young children, and responsibilities?
How do you feel about death?
How do you think about death when there's serious illness, young children, and responsibilities?
Yeah, that's always very, very difficult and tough. But sometimes you have no control over it. So you have to let it happen. Obviously you try your very best, but there's a limit on what anybody can do. Life does have tragedies. people thought that my life was stuffed when my dad died. I was only 16 at the time. I was just getting ready to do exams, for A-levels and university entrance. Your father died. But you still had a lot of stoicism in those days. You can still do something, see what can be done. And that's what family are for, to look after one another. So, if somebody dies, look, just a nice inspiring story, that when I was again, as a monk in Australia, there was this nurse, Sri Lankan nurse. She was doing a nursing degree at the local university in Australia. When she was doing that degree at the local university, her husband had to work 2 jobs, to pay bills, and she had 2 young kids. And so, she was really, really struggling actually to survive. And then imagine what happens when the news came through that her husband, coming home from the second job, fell asleep at the wheel of the car, crashed the car and killed himself. Kind of a tragedy. And that should have been almost the end for her. But the Sri Lankan community there, because it's a community, we work together, help one another. So we managed to raise some funds, but that's not enough. Unfortunately, because of the work I'd done, I had been awarded this John Curtin Medal some years earlier for my community work. So I knew the VC, the Vice Chancellor at this university where she was studying. So, give it a try. I gave her a call. Because it was me and she knew me, it got straight through. And then I got through, I said, look, there's a big problem. One of your students just lost her husband, she's got 2 kids. She's studying there. She's got no way to pay any bills. Can you help? Is that possible? I can vouch for her. Because, she knew me, and I was, I'd been checked out by the university, and it was, legit monk. No, I wasn't in it for anything for myself, I just wanted to help. And she said, oh, okay, it's you. Okay, great. So she was given a scholarship, didn't have to pay a penny until she finished her degree in nursing. And she always comes, to see me once a year to show how she's going, how her kids have grown up, and how she's really not just an ordinary nurse, but a really high-powered nurse. And just a little bit of kindness has been repaid. And there's things like that which I really love. As a monk, even, to be able to open doors for people. So anyway, that's kind of a nice, happy story. Okay, we're going to wrap things up now. What are we supposed to do now? Is it supposed to... Totally.
Silent meditation.
Okay, silent meditation. So please close your eyes.